Well, good Tuesday afternoon to you. Trust that you're having a wonderful Tuesday, and thankful for another opportunity to bring one of these daily devotionals. And I'm trying to be an encouragement to you and your family and friends as you listen to this. And I hope we can try to during these days especially have our attention upon God and upon God's Word. And I'd like to read a verse to you from Mark chapter number 6. Now, Mark's one of my favorite gospel records, not just because it bears my name, but because the movement in the book of Mark, where there's many miracles and continues right along with the action. And we remind ourselves of this story. And we pick up right after the feeding of the 5,000. And after they'd taken the little boy's lunch and God had blessed it. And you find that it says that in verse 46 that he was departing from them, and he was alone he was alone praying, and his disciples were in the ship. In verse number 48 of chapter 6 in Mark's gospel, it says this, and he saw them toiling and rowing. And you can read this story, this account in other passages, but I want to remind you the picture that I have in my mind is the Lord is up in the mountain praying, and as he looks out over the sea and sees the disciples, he sees the storm from a different vantage point than we do. But he also sees us in the midst of the storm. The Bible uses the word here, he sees them toiling and rowing, which means he sees their labor, he sees the energy, he sees the effort in which they're putting in. But I want to remind you, he always sees. And so when we think about the storms of life, and in particular this storm that we're dealing with as far as this health crisis in the middle of our a lifetime, you say, well, what's going on? Well, we'll remind ourselves that God sees. There's a verse in the Old Testament when the children of Israel were going through the wilderness wandering. The Bible says this, that he saw their walking through this great wilderness. And so when God sees the children of Israel, though they had disobeyed him and though they did not do what he wanted them to do, he still saw them and met their needs. And the disciples here in the New Testament, as they're going out without him, they think that they're all alone. But here's the truth, he sees them. And I want to say this to you, when we cannot see him, he still sees us. Sometimes we ask the question, say, well, what's going on? What's the Lord trying to accomplish? We do not know that, but what we can know this is God sees every labor, every effort of love, every effort that we give him. And the Bible says this, that he saw their toiling and rowing. I'm thankful that God sees us in the midst of a storm. Even when we can't see him, he sees us. And as far as the different part of the building that we're standing in, I'm actually standing on top of the Baptistry. And I don't know if you can see from the camera here, but there's a temporary cover that where the baptistry is, and we've got some plywood and some wood laying over that, and some temporary rails to make OSHA happy, to keep anyone from falling. And you're looking out over the whole auditorium from the baptistry, and literally standing on top of it. We actually finished this plywood on the front of the pulpit area today. And in a few weeks you'll see the choir rails and all that go up. But if you want to just look quickly around here, and you'll just see the area where normally where you see this wire and stuff, this would be where people would be prepared to come down into the baptistry. And we're praying that God allows us soon to use these baptismal waters for his honor and for his glory, and we can get back to what we call normal, but most importantly, reaching people with the gospel.